they've spoken already. I don't think there's any issue between, certainly from Max's side, he's not going to change. He's a tough racer. If you race Max Verstappen, and there's an element, I think, of Lando learning how to race Max. And I think, they're just discovering that. And inevitably, there's going to be more close racing between the two of them as the cars look so close. They've spoken already. I don't think it's...
What? And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking, it is not over yet. Christian Horner making his opinions, as you just heard, fairly clear on the way he feels about the Lando Max. Understandably, he's going to take Max Verstappen's side. I mean, as a team boss, it's difficult to fault him, isn't it? As a team boss, it's difficult to fault him if he's going to take Max Verstappen's side. Completely get it. We'll get into Christian Horner's comments in a bit, but let's get into somebody else's comments, and that's this man. Hey, you may recognise him. He's on F1 2024. His name is Mark Priestley, and Planet F1 have done an article suggesting that never mind Verstappen causing a collision with Lando Norris in Austria, it's Mark Priestley. He believes it was his actions after the contact that were more dangerous, as they were petulant and in retaliation. And as we know, Verstappen and Norris clashed on lap 64 of the Austrian Grand Prix. Some suggested it was inevitable, and it was the worst of all the incidents of Max moving under braking. He said, although Verstappen was comfortably ahead by more than 7 seconds, as we know, that slow pit stop put them together on the track, well within a couple of seconds. And he did so. He blocked Verstappen on several occasions, but rebuffed by Verstappen before, again trying into the turn 3 braking zone on lap 64. Now, going around the outside of Verstappen, they ended up hitting each other. Norris crawled back to the pits when he retired the car. Verstappen ended up bagging 5th. But Priestley, a former McLaren mechanic, okay, could be a tiny bit biased, you may argue, but I watch his YouTube. I really like the guy. I've got his book. So Priestley, a former McLaren mechanic, he believes that was just a penalty, but finds it strange that the stewards didn't earlier penalise Verstappen for moving under braking in his defending against Norris. Friends outside the car, at least they were until today, the 47-year-old declared in his YouTube channel. He said one of the talking points in recent weeks has been how Verstappen and Red Bull have excelled under pressure. They have continuously delivered excellence in every area. We rarely see mistakes from the team or driver, yet Sunday that was different. He went on to say, saying about the disastrous pit stop which brought Lando Norris back into play, and he said it was like we were seeing Verstappen from years gone by when he was put under pressure. And he said they even introduced a rule about not moving under braking because of this Verstappen, and we did a whole video about it, and yet it was Verstappen himself who seemed to breach that rule, although stewards didn't seem to agree necessarily, which I find very strange. He goes on to say, saying, if you look at those incidents, one before the actual content, I think I can think of definitely one, possibly 2 moves where Verstappen, in my mind, was clearly at fault. These were incidents in question. One of them, I think, was fair enough. One of those were Lando locked up on the inside, fair enough, and the others moving in the braking zone is vastly dangerous, and that's why it has been banned. The drivers are absolutely on the limit of the cars. They are tearing into the corner. If you looked, for example, that was the reason Baku happened between Ricciardo and Verstappen. They are not just braking for a roundabout, as we would in our cars with a little bit to spare. They are on the ragged edge, on the limit. And from that point of view, it's really hard to argue. And he said on the first occasion that happened, Lando did well to avoid an accident, and he came on the radio to complain, understandably. And he went, but nothing was done. And he said on lap 64, the collision took place. The worst of all the incidents of Max moving under braking. What happened was Max went for the inside line, which was great for Lando because he was braking on the rubber, on the grippy part of the track. He was able to do normal braking on the braking line, but he said what happened then, as we all saw, Max moved over to the left and did not leave a car's width. I can't see any world that the stewards say that is not just an offence, but is hugely dangerous. And the 10-second penalty was, for me, fair. But it had been more, I would have also argued that was fair. He said, however, it was Verstappen's actions after the contact that perturbed Priestley. He said, whilst it was immediately evident Verstappen had a puncture. Norris gained a few metres on the Dutchman, only for Verstappen to move across to the right where Norris was, and according to Priestley, trying to push him off the track. But then it carried on, because after the corner, he continued in his review of the incident down to turn 4. At least it seemed like Max started to veer over and push Lando off the track again. His car was out of control at that point. He knows he's heading for the pit. Lando at that stage had more grip and his tyre hadn't let go, yet Max was still desperate for him not to pass. Almost, it would seem, angry, it would appear, at least angry, at the incident. That, I think, is equally, if not more dangerous, because that seemed petulant. It seemed like it was retaliation. Now, look, I'm judging this from the outside, but it seemed like the petulance we've seen in the past, like an immature Max, which is not something we've become used to in recent times. I have a huge amount of respect for Max Verstappen, the way he drives normally, and yet today, that all seemed to go out of the window. So we've got, obviously, I'm going to try and find the footage of that, because I think it's quite interesting. Where is that? Okay, here we go. This is the incident. This is the moment. This is the moment it happens. So, as you can see here, let's hit that play button. Ooh, that's so loud right there. I will just slow it down, because that just completely deafened me. I don't know about you. So let's just, okay. So there we go. I mean, they hit each other there. Fair enough. They hit each other. Lando had nowhere to go. Max, I think at this point, to be fair, he does lose control of the car. He loses control of the car. But this is not the bit we're talking about. This is the bit here where Mark Priestley has suggested is petulant Max Verstappen. And here we go, and this is it. As you can see, Max appears to, completely cut him off. Now, let's have another look at that, shall we? So, at this point, does Max look in his mirrors? Yes, he does. Look, he looks in his mirrors. You can see Max Verstappen there, looking in his mirrors. He knows Lando is coming through. He knows he's got a puncture because the car feels weird. But yet, in his anger, he turns the wheel, and he keeps turning the wheel to try and stop him. So there we go, Max Verstappen once again. Well done. I mean, well done for that day. Well done for that dangerous driving. Yeah, not good at all. Not good at all whatsoever. So, Mark Priestley, I completely agree with you there. Upon review, Max Verstappen, as talented as he is, that seems to be a flaw. Senna had it, Schumacher had it, and I think Max Verstappen had it. There is a similar thing. They are all some of the great, Schumacher and Senna, the great drivers. One that I think Max Verstappen may well be come the end of his career. But it is a flaw that they potentially all had. And like Schumacher, Max Verstappen seemingly can't admit when he's made a mistake. But when you've got team bosses like Christian Horner, understandably, he's defending Max. I get it. He wants to keep Max. You're not going to have a team boss that's going to slag your driver off, especially when there's rumours about him going to Mercedes. That I completely understand. But still, it doesn't help when that's not addressed. Maybe it's addressed behind closed doors, possibly, who knows. Yeah. I guess we'll have to see. But let's talk about Christian Horner then on the criticism. Horner, though, isn't happy with how Max has been labelled by McLaren's team boss, which you heard on our initial Verstappen versus Lando Norris fallout. So Christian Horner has labelled criticism at Max Verstappen by McLaren counterpart Andrea Stella as wrong and unfair. Horner also insisted Verstappen is not going to change his aggressive approach after colliding with Lando Norris in the Austrian Grand Prix. As you can hear Horner. Let's, I tell you what, let's hear him again. This is him talking. This is Horner talking to Sky Sports.
Any issue between, certainly from Max's side, he's not going to change. He's a tough racer. If you race Max Verstappen, and there's an element, I think, of Lando learning how to race Max.
This is what I don't get. There's an element of Lando knowing how to race Max. Yeah, in a way, I understand that's something Lewis had to come to terms with, but it's Max potentially getting sometimes, quite near the line, sometimes over the line, like he was in Austria. And that is exactly how you got, in my opinion, Silverstone 2021, when it was Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton at Copse. Neither was going to give. And that's when you get things like that, because beforehand Hamilton seemingly had been getting out of the way a lot for Max, and funny enough, his dive bombs, similar dive bombs to what Lando Norris was complaining about, and that's what happens. But let's see.
And I think they're just discovering that, and inevitably there's going to be more close racing between the two of them as the cars look so close. They've spoken already. I don't think.
There we go. I mean, yeah. Interestingly, he says they have spoken already. So hopefully they can make friends and we can continue. And and we have an absolutely very exciting World Championship. But yeah, he said certainly from Max's side, he's not going to change. We've heard that there's an element, I think, of Lando learning how to race Max, and they're discovering that. When you say learning how to, it's a difficult one. All the drivers are different. So I imagine, even when you're playing online or against your buddies, so-and-so leaves some space, so-and-so doesn't leave some space. I get that. But we're learning to go against someone that is has the potential to be dangerous and potentially breach the rules. In the case of Max, where Max thinks it is hard racing, some other people think you might breach the rules and you're worried that you're going to have an accident. I think that's a bit rubbish there, Horner. He's right when he says there's going to be more close racing between the two of them as the cars look so close over the forthcoming races. So that I completely agree with. So yeah, fair play. So let's get into the FIA and Max. Now, Motorsport.com has got an interesting article asking whether the FIA should clamp down on the Verstappen style defending. We all like hard racing, absolutely. And to be fair to that one, to the incident between Verstappen and Norris, Max did squeeze in. It was, though, to be fair, in Max's defence, it was the lightest of touches. We saw very similar circumstances between Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, I think, in 2019 when they touched in Brazil. It was the lightest of touches, and it ended both their races. It was like their cars were made of paper, and in this case it was the same. It just must have been the perfect storm of touching the wrong angles. And yeah, so the crash between Max Verstappen, as I said, it was the lightest of touches. But Motorsport.com are asking, is it time for the FIA to clamp down on defensive tactics like Verstappen's, or should we accept this is all part of racing? So they are in a similar situation to 2021. And as McLaren has already calling for the FIA to clamp down on Verstappen's braking zone movement from Austria. I'm inclined to agree. That was on lap 55. I don't have a copy, but that was dangerous. It must do so with additional clarification, explanation of F1 racing rules guidelines. Surely it must also make these public. The checks and balance element of media questioning of F1 race directors infuriatingly gone since 2021. Okay, but he said the race is important. The race is important to this point because having finally been penalised for his outrageous defending in taking runoffs against Lewis Hamilton in Jeddah, Verstappen made sure he stayed on track in his Abu Dhabi one-lap attack. If he's reined in, he showed he's too good to not respond. At the same time, the clamour for F1, it says, to finally implement permanent stewards that attend every race is now unignorable. Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues we have in Formula One is consistency, and that's something we don't have. And the argument that such a body might be open to influence is flimsy when the same is theoretically true of the temporary stewards. Yeah, completely agree. So F1 racing officiating might become just as contentious and tedious as football's VAR, but it already is. The genie speaking with driver team radio outbursts, whines just isn't going to put it back in the bottle. This is Alex Kalanukas, I think the Autosport editor. He said F1 should therefore embrace it, even make it further part of the show, as is done in other very contentiously officiated sports such as the NFL. Let the stewards decide, not the rulebook, someone suggested as well. Every sport requires rules that all participants adhere to. It doesn't matter how many rules you have, for example, but how far the front wheels need to be alongside the rival cars for the attacker to be granted space. There would always be circumstances that don't quite fit. Completely agree. It's the overtaking. And now I know Peter Windsor suggested that Max didn't do anything wrong. He's a wise man, wiser than me, knows more about Formula One than me. I'm inclined to disagree with him. Sorry, Peter, but I am. Having said that, everyone does like hard racing, but there's a line. And when you do, it didn't look like an accident when Max and Norris hit, because Max would have known he was there. And then when does a hit that you're okay with become a hit that you're not okay with. And there's the issue. Now, whilst I understand that the passing they ultimately there is an element of grey area, and it's really subjective, and you can't, I think, in racing have what they're looking for is very binary rules, like yes or no. I don't really think that fits, and I get it what they're saying there when they say every incident is slightly different, and applying stringent rules removes the finesse and nuance required to make the correct decision. Having a specific rule opens the door to pushing it to or beyond the limit. Completely agree. But similarly, did there need to be a Verstappen rule about moving in braking zones? I'd argue no, because all of the above and more can be covered by a dangerous or unfair driving guideline. Completely agree. That's what they got Fernando on, rightly or wrongly, in Austria when it was him against George Russell. So it's really difficult, but it's a really interesting article which I will no doubt link below. So let's move on then, and we've got, did Max's tactics pay off? That's a question asked by, I think, racefans.com, and they talk about Verstappen's willingness to make contact paid off again, but has Norris noticed? They talk about his vigorous defence, and it was, but it did end up evolving in a clash and penalties, and Norris claimed the Red Bull driver had repeatedly changed his line in braking zones. He said, I know, of course, that in the past that has always been a bit of a complaint, but now I always move my wheel before I brake, and then, of course, you brake in a straight line trajectory or whatever. I think, yeah, and I think that was Verstappen saying that afterwards. Sorry, this is one example of how Verstappen pays attention to not only what the rules state, but also what stewards have an appetite to enforce. So he's very, very clever as well. Afterwards, McLaren team principal really laid into him, suggesting that it was Max going unpunished in the 2021 Lewis Hamilton battles that's ultimately resulted in this, which I think is quite interesting. If you appreciate, as well as Verstappen, though, that it's not just a matter of the rules state, it says, but what the stewards are prepared to enforce. Perhaps only Fernando Alonso has tested the grey areas as frequently. He's an extremely skillful performer in wheel-to-wheel combat to begin with. I think, ultimately, yes, he had fair battles with Leclerc. He's had really good battles with Lewis, but with Lewis, he has gone a bit far, as he did in Austria. But to this, he adds an understanding that the stewards are fundamentally reluctant to penalise unless they feel they have to. Sainz is even gone on to say, the article, that Carlos Sainz Jr. observed this earlier in the year after he was penalised for a collision with Piastri in Miami. The Ferrari driver pointed out that while F1 has precise guidelines stating how the stewards will judge overtaking moves, if no contact occurs, they are often tempted to say no harm, no foul. They are. It's really interesting. At the end of the day, Max Verstappen got the better of Lando Norris because he ended up gaining more points in the championship, and Norris ended up going out with the damage. So I don't think Max could have planned that on purpose. I just think it was in the moment, but he did come off. So did his tactics work? You can make an argument for, yes, in this case, Max Verstappen's tactics very much did work. And then we've got Helmut Marko saying no real danger of letting drivers make contact in low-speed corners. So Max Verstappen should not have been penalised for his collision. Obviously, no real danger, he said. Obviously, he's going to say that the pair collided. But yes, it is a low-speed corner. It was at low speeds. But what wasn't low speed is when Max Verstappen blocked Lando Norris on lap 55 under braking. Max and Lando were at it, he said, and sometimes over the limit. I agree that. Both, but we must not forget they were braking down to low speed there. No opponent was nearby. The runoff area is large. There is no real... So as long as the runoff area, it's good to hit people then, is it? And is it, Marco? So why not let them fight it out? I mean, let's be honest. The collision between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen at Monza was fairly low speed, but Verstappen ended up on his head. On his head, which to be fair is not particularly good. I mean, here we go. This is the article. I'm just going to transfer you to here. There we go. That is pretty much what, that's pretty much what happened there. Not good at all, is it? No. So, Marco, you're talking rubbish again. I do like you, Marco, though. are entertaining, is what I can say. And what I like about Marco is he is happy to give his opinion. He doesn't play the PR game that a lot of other drivers did. For example, Toto Wolff was not going to be drawn in whose fault it is, possibly because he wants Max Verstappen for 2025 or 2026 and beyond, I guess. But anyway, if you liked what you see, please give us a subscribe. Let us know what you think. We will speak to you soon. If you like and subscribe, you are a double world champion in our eyes. Thank you very much. And as I said, we'll speak to you soon.